Welcome to the Awesome Pod Mix. You are listening to Abby. The idea behind this podcast was to talk about how certain movies and TV shows made me feel when I watched them for the very first time. A reputed filmmaker once said, "When a piece of art invokes a similar feeling amidst a large audience, it's the triumph of the filmmaker." That's the magic of cinema. I love the magic of cinema. Today I'll be talking about Marvel Studios' What If Season 2 Episode 4. To quote Guillermo del Toro, animation is cinema. This episode's title is What If Iron Man Crashed into the Grandmaster? The episode is written by A.C. Bradley and directed by Brian Andrews. This is the balance episode from What If Season 1. It's even mentioned in the previously on section. Due to COVID, the makers weren't able to finish it in time for its release. It's such an action-packed episode that I understand why it took so much time. The episode begins with the Battle of New York from the first Avengers movie. Tony carries the nuclear missile through the wormhole but doesn't make it back. He gets tossed around in space and crashes into the Grandmaster's palace on Sakaar. When the Grandmaster notices a spark in Tony's armor, he commands Topaz to foam. Topaz says, "Release the foam," just like the Grandmaster said it in the Party Thor episode in Season 1. Grandmaster recognizes Tony from the news and refers to him as Metal Mojo Man. So Grandmaster gets intergalactic news? Tony watches the news and breathes a sigh of relief seeing that Pepper is fine. Tony refers to the Grandmaster as the Wizard of Oz. Tony categorically tells him that he needs to go home. Grandmaster wants Tony to join him in the celebration of his 21st birthday. How is that even possible? Time works differently on Sakaar. Tony's party days are behind him, so he wants to leave pronto. On Grandmaster's signal, Topaz melts an iron statue. Tony identifies the threat and decides to stay back for one party. On the racetrack, we see Valkyrie's pod with the same wing style as Thor's in Ragnarok and Love and Thunder. Korg and his other friends from Ragnarok are also participating in this race. Tony calls the car race Intergalactic NASCAR. Grandmaster calls it the Chariot race. When Valkyrie's pod gets turned over after an accident, the Grandmaster asks the audience to throw cans at her. The Grandmaster reveals that because of the famine, they now also throw chinchillas. The Grandmaster uses the words peckish and starving interchangeably. Peckish and starving are two different extremes of hunger. Valkyrie drinks the same brand of alcohol as she does in Ragnarok. In this universe, Grandmaster's champion is Snuffy, an elephant-like monster. Tony uses his bracelet to summon his suit, but it's sticky now. I think that's because of the foam. Or I don't want to imagine what the Grandmaster did to the suit that it's sticky. Tony flies over to the racetrack, but his suit malfunctions, so he drops to the ground. When Korg tries to help Tony, Tony refers to him as Mount Rushmore. Tony's suit continues to malfunction and Snuffy is unleashed on the car racers. Snuffy is neutralized and when the smoke clears, we see Gamora. Gamora is seen using the same gun that Thor uses in Ragnarok. She starts to fire at Tony. Tony and Korg hide behind the foam. Tony's repulsor manages to take out Gamora's gun. Gamora removes her sword to attack Tony. Tony inquires who she is. Gamora responds, "Your death." Gamora gets electrocuted with the Grandmaster's chip. It is also used on Tony moments later. Tony and Gamora are locked in the same room that Hulk stayed in Ragnarok. For reasons unknown, Korg was already locked up in there. Tony uses his arc reactor to get rid of the electric chip. Tony asks Gamora who she is and the better question is, why is she trying to kill him? It reminded me of the scene from Avengers Infinity War which went something like, "I'm gonna ask you this one time, where's Gamora? I'll do you one better. Who's Gamora? I'll do you one better. Why's Gamora?" Gamora is of course Thanos' adoptive daughter. Tony has this thing of bonding well with Thanos' adoptive daughters, whether it's Nebula or Gamora. Tony doesn't want to stick around at Sakaar because this is like Dr. Moreau's Hunger Games. Tony uses his bracelet to unlock the locked doors. Tony checks with Korg. Ready to rock and roll? Get it? Because he's made of rocks. Korg's player name in the game Fortnite in Avengers Endgame is Ragnarok and Roll. Tony leaves Gamora behind and locks the door. Korg uses the Hulk Smash move to get rid of the guards. I guess he saw that on the news. Tony tries to steal Grandmaster's ship, but Gamora fires and misses the shot. In fact, it makes way for them to escape. Tony uses the remote to electrocute Gamora just like Thor did to Loki in Ragnarok. Grandmaster's alarm on Sakaar is just Grandmaster repeating, "Alarm! Alarm!" Gamora is hell-bent on exacting revenge from Tony. Tony destroyed Thanos' Chitauri army. New York wasn't a victory for Tony, he lost a friend. The friend in question, Phil Coulson. Tony questions if Gamora knows what it's like to see their world get destroyed. Of course she knows. Tony is about to electrocute Gamora again but stops when Grandmaster's hologram calls him a nasty man. Tony checks with Korg to confirm if Grandmaster is a bad guy. Korg reveals that the Grandmaster made him sit on paper like paperweight. We all know paper is Rock's nemesis. Paper beats Rock. To piss Gamora off and prove her wrong, Tony decides to save Sakaar. After that, he would go to Thanos. Tony and Korg escape on a ship. Tony wants a race car driver. Korg takes Tony to Valkyrie. Tony convinces Valkyrie to join his team and beat the Grandmaster. Topaz comes in to arrest Gamora. Gamora kicks the chip remote in the air and snatches the melting stick from Topaz. When the soldier dressed like a celestial starts to melt, Gamora says it smells like yarrow root. Yarrow root is the plant Nebula tries to eat in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, but it's not ripe. In a montage, we see Tony as he lays out his plans. He uses the scraps from Sakaar to build himself a race car. Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave with a box of scraps. Tony wants to leave the place better than he found it. Typical Tony. Tony challenges the Grandmaster to a car race. Winner takes the planet, but the Grandmaster also wants Tony's suit. Gamora and Topaz warn the Grandmaster against the race. Tony, Valkyrie and Korg walk very slowly onto the tracks. You know, the typical slow-mo heroes walk. The Grandmaster forces Gamora to be a part of the race. Actually, he leaves her no choice. Tony sticks a comm in Gamora's car to talk to her during the race. The race begins and the Grandmaster uses every trick in the book to cheat to win. Tony refers to Gamora as Oscar the Grouch, because she's green and grouchy. What I love about Tony and Gamora's conversation during the race is that Tony asks Gamora to figure out who she is outside of Thanos. Her response is she's a murderess. Tony acknowledges that his father was no father of the year either. Gamora nearly meets with an accident and Tony checks if she's okay. He's glad to know she's alive. He even refers to Gamora as Lady Grinch because she aims her guns at him. Tony requests Valkyrie for help. Valkyrie warns Tony about Topaz and her melting stick incoming. Topaz hits Tony's pod. Tony gets tossed in the air and his suit lands on the tracks like a race car. Tony reveals that he's lived in his father's shadow for a long time, but he's not his father. Gamora too has a chance to choose her path and not be like her father. You can choose who you want to be, a better version. The question is, who is she? Her name is Gamora. Gamora aims at Snuffy's brothers to take them off the track. In an attempt to do that, her pod crashes. Tony thanks Gamora because she saved him from Snuffy's brothers. The remaining contestants in the race are Valkyrie at the third position, Tony at the second position, and the Grandmaster in the lead. When Valkyrie's pod crashes, Tony checks with her if she's okay. Valkyrie wants Tony to win the race. Tony uses his arc reactor to increase his car's speed and go through Grandmaster's electric shield. Tony wins the race. Toward the end, Tony transforms his car to his Sakaaran Iron Man suit. Like a petty child, the Grandmaster doesn't accept defeat. He calls for Topaz, who speeds in with her pod. Valkyrie crashes Topaz's pod. The melting stick flies ahead and melts the Grandmaster like the Wicked Witch of the West. To Korg, it smells like bad choices. What a line. Valkyrie reluctantly becomes the king of Sakaar. Korg is appointed as her special counsel. Gamora presents Tony as hostage before Thanos. Gamora leaps toward Thanos and Tony tosses her the melting stick. I don't think Thanos dies. It's not that easy to kill him. Also, isn't he an Eternal who are basically robots? Thanos' origin is still a mystery in the MCU. Unless I see Thanos melting with my own eyes, I'm not gonna believe it. Mid-credit scene. Melted Grandmaster requests Topaz for a bucket. Grandmaster is an elder and immortal, and maybe it's not easy to kill him. He could regain his form. Again, Grandmaster's origin is a mystery in the MCU. The animation on this episode is next level. You can listen to the awesome pod mix and subscribe to it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, and Good Pods. If you like what I'm doing, you can support me on Patreon at patreon.com/awesomepodmix. Thanks for listening.